The death of Rizal sparked the rapid growth of the Katipunan. Numerous uprisings erupted but were quickly suppressed. Bonifacio suffered great losses, while Emilio Aguinaldo gained victories in Cavite. Bonifacio found himself caught in the first great split in the movement when he disagreed with the creation of a new revolutionary government as chartered in the Tejeros Convention. Aguinaldo was elected leader of the new movement, and Bonifacio was later accused of insubordination, which led to his execution on May 10, 1897. The revolution soon took its toll on the Spanish government. To minimize losses on both sides, a truce, known as the Treaty of Biak-na-Bato, was called. The Spaniards, however, used this treaty to allow more Spanish reinforcements to enter the country, while revolutionary leaders, including Aguinaldo, were exiled in Hong Kong. Spain was in the twilight of its imperial powers, and a new imperial power appeared in the horizon, the United States of America. Aguinaldo and the other exiled revolutionaries entered into an alliance with the United States. When the Americans reached our shores, the Olympia, under Commodore George Dewey, battled the inferior Spanish galleons in Manila Bay. Spain's flagship, Reina Cristina, was on fire after a massive and accurate barrage of firepower. The Americans won, and the rule of Spain was nearing its end. With the victory of the Americans, Aguinaldo was able to return from exile in Hong Kong. Philippine independence was proclaimed in Aguinaldo's residence in Kawit, Cavite on June 12, 1898. The Philippine national anthem was played for the first time, and the flag of the Republic formally unfurled. Apolinario Mabini, Aguinaldo's chief political advisor, pointed out the absence of any formal American support to Philippine independence. Meanwhile, unknown to the Filipinos, the United States and Spain agreed to stage a mock battle on August 13, 1898, and Manila was turned over to the United States. As the Americans marched in to take possession of the islands, Filipinos watched from the sidelines. As U.S. expansionist intentions became clearer, Aguinaldo and Mabini created a revolutionary government that would continue to struggle for the independence of the Philippines until she is recognized by the free nations. The revolutionary government was inaugurated on September 15, 1898, at the Baraswain Church in Malolos, Bulacan. The Malolos Constitution was ratified on January 21, 1899, and this led to the formal inauguration of the first Philippine Republic on January 23, 1899, with Emilio Aguinaldo as elected president. Unfortunately, despite frantic attempts to secure foreign recognition, none could be obtained. A new war was about to erupt. The idea of self-determination and nationhood exerted a powerful hold over the new republic, but it had to be kept in the sidelines. The Philippine-American War erupted finally on February 4, 1899. There are conflicting versions of the incident that triggered the start of the war, one of which is of an American sentry going too far into the Philippine side. When the Filipinos protested, he opened fire. The Americans waged war with new ferocity, and it quickly spread from Luzon to the Visayas and Mindanao. Their attacks were fast, ruthless, and systematic. Filipino rebels were easily subdued, as in the case of the fall of Panay in Iloilo, the nerve center of the revolution in the Visayas. After After the Iloilo occupation, the Americans launched a massive offensive in Luzon. Filipino troops defeated the Nebraskan 4th Cavalry under Major J.F. Bell in Kingua, now known as Plaridel, Bulacan. Despite its loss, the American Volunteer Regiment captured strategic areas from Filipino forces, and soon enough, the American Army could infiltrate rebel posts. The Filipino rebellion began to fall apart. American military strategies and strife among the Filipino Army furthered division in the newborn nation. In fact, controversy within the ranks of the Philippine troops resulted in the assassination of the highest-ranking commander of the Filipino-American War, Antonio Luna. His death shook the foundation of a republic already on the verge of collapse. Emilio Aguinaldo sent his youngest general, Gregorio del Pilar, to defend Tirad Pass. A platoon of sharpshooters mounted a cliff above the pass from which they fired at the Filipino defenders. One of them shot del Pilar in the neck and he died instantly. On his dead body, the Americans found a diary where he foretold his own death. "I die gladly, fighting for my beloved country." As the Americans conquered the provinces of Luzon and the Visayas, the Muslim Filipinos in Mindanao relentlessly fought back foreign rule. The Americans first offered them treaties, like the Bates Treaty, which established the Sulu Sultanate only as an American protectorate. The Sultan, however, became concerned when the Americans began taking sovereignty over Sulu seriously. When the treaty was terminated, it resulted in a period of unrest and warfare in Sulu and in other parts of Moroland. An important outcome of the Bates Treaty and the Moro-American Wars, however, was the inclusion of the Muslim-held territories into the government of the Philippine Islands. The last days of the fledgling republic saw the Filipino nationalists split into two factions. Aguinaldo headed the forces resisting U.S. occupation, while several leaders of the republic, including Pedro Paterno and Felipe Buencamino, accepted the American conditions for the benevolent assimilation of the Filipinos. On March 23, 1901, spies disguised as Macabebe soldiers captured Emilio Aguinaldo in Palanan, Isabela. On April 1, Aguinaldo pledged allegiance to the United States, and the First Republic had come to an end. A few Filipinos, however, continued to fight for the country's freedom, resorting again to guerrilla warfare. A group of Filipino fighters attacked an American garrison in Balangiga, and the Americans suffered heavy casualties. The American ego was severely bruised by the Balangiga attack, and they retaliated with full force. General Jake Smith was quoted as having said to his soldiers that the more they burned and killed, the more they would please him. The result was one of the most violent encounters in the Philippine-American War, and the Balangiga church bells, which sounded the start of the attack, were confiscated by the Americans as booty. Despite American victory and rule, the Filipinos continued their pursuit of freedom and found the theater to be an effective platform for expression. Underneath the romantic plots of their zarzuelas was an exploration of deep-seated feelings against Spain and the United States. The American colonial Supreme Court would ban these dramas because they incited the people to resistance. Despite the government's vigilance, the zarzuela sustained the Filipinos' spirit of nationalism. Religion also played a crucial role in the continuing revolution. Bishop Gregorio Aglipay urged the Filipino clergy to support the revolutionary cause, and he was excommunicated by the church. In August 1902, the first Philippine independent church, Iglesia Filipina Independiente, was established with Aglipay as its supreme bishop. The Americans made a straightforward offer to the thriving group of Filipino nationalists: eradicate the rebellion and you can have self-government. A politician appealed to General Macario Sakay, leader of the last organized resistance against the Americans, to surrender peacefully. General Sakay believed them and surrendered for the sake of the promised independence. Little did he know that a plot to apprehend him had been devised, and he was tried for sedition and sentenced to death. The last organized resistance finally fell with the capture of Sakay in 1906. Sakay's arrest resulted in the founding of the Nacionalista Party under elected Speaker Sergio Osmeña and Majority Floor Leader Manuel L. Quezon. This brought the struggle for self-rule into the realm of electoral politics. When the Democrats returned to power in the U.S. during the 1930s Depression years, their constituencies opposed the continued colonization of the Philippines. The country was granted Commonwealth status under the 1934 Tidings-McDuffie Act. Quezon and Osmeña were elected president and vice president. Not long after the Commonwealth government was proclaimed, World War II erupted. The Axis powers, Japan, Germany, and Italy, waged war against the Allied forces of the U.S., Great Britain, France, and Russia. Our own steady march towards freedom was violently interrupted by the Second World War. Japan attacked Manila on December 8, 1941, a day after the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. By December 25, 1941, Manuel L. Quezon and General MacArthur declared Manila an open city, and the Japanese troops marched in. The Japanese occupation of the Philippines had started, and with it, wholesale slaughter and unimaginable hardship. Fighting against insurmountable odds, Filipino and American soldiers retreated to Bataan and together battled the Japanese army. As the weeks dragged on, food and ammunition dwindled, and the soldiers were plagued by malnutrition and disease. After 4 agonizing months, Bataan fell on April 9, 1942. The Japanese soldiers forced Filipino and American troops to march from Bataan to Tarlac. More than 70,000 Filipinos and 13,000 Americans in various stages of injury, ill health, and exhaustion had to walk 120 kilometers under the scorching heat, or else they would be bayoneted or shot. Hundreds of troops died along the way. The Bataan Death March would be forever etched in history as one of the most horrifying experiences that the Filipinos underwent during the Japanese occupation. With the fall of Bataan, the struggle was left mostly in the hands of Filipino guerrilla fighters who attacked Japanese convoys and collaborators in rugged, often mountainous terrain. Most of the attacks were carried out to pave the way for the return of the Americans. General Douglas MacArthur and the rest of the American troops finally arrived on October 20, 1944 in Leyte. 3 days after their landing, MacArthur took over command of the ground forces while awaiting the outcome of the naval battles, which the Americans finally won before the end of October 1944. After the U.S. reoccupation of Manila in February 1945, MacArthur handed over control of the Commonwealth government to Sergio Osmeña. The war was finally over. On July 4, 1946, the United States finally recognized Philippine independence. Americans solemnly lowered the stars and stripes as President Manuel Rojas hoisted the Filipino flag amidst deafening cheers. At last, after centuries of struggle, the Philippines had become an independent, sovereign nation. World War II. The bomb attacks leave Manila in ruins, and over 1 million Filipinos dead. But the war does not scar the Filipino spirit. The devastation only makes us more determined to move forward, to be a strong republic. And on July 4, 1946, the Philippine flag is raised, restoring the freedom we proclaimed in 1898.